From Pacifica, this is Democracy Now!
I have decided to present you with a letter of my resignation, that you should present it to the relevant authorities to allow the plan and full exercise of the provision of our Article 36 of the Constitution.
After a coup in Mali, President Amadou Toumani Touré agrees to formally step down. We'll get the latest from Feroz Manji, editor of African Awakening, The Emerging Revolutions. Then to the Maldives, part 2 of our conversation with ousted President Mohamed Nasheed, forced out at gunpoint.
It was really shocking and deeply disturbing that the United States government so instantly recognized the former dictatorship coming back again. We were hoping that they would look into the facts and understand what was happening on the ground.
Former President Mohamed Nasheed is one of the leading voices on climate change. All that and more coming up. Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Hopes for a ceasefire in Syria appear to be in jeopardy after Bashar al-Assad's government demanded written guarantees rebel groups will stop fighting before it pulls back troops under the terms of a UN peace plan. UN Arab League envoy Kofi Annan had brokered a deal for Syria to begin the pullback of troops from around towns and cities by Tuesday, and for a truce to start 48 hours later. Turkey's accused Syrian forces of firing across the Turkish border and wounding 3 people close to one of the largest refugee camps housing Syrian nationals. Thousands of Syrian refugees are now living in refugee camps.
We have left everything behind, our home, families. I always think about home, my family, relatives, and neighbors there. I miss everything, and I want to return as soon as the bloodshed comes to an end.
In other news from Syria, Human Rights Watch has accused Syrian security forces of summarily executing over 100 civilians and wounding or capturing opposition fighters during recent attacks on cities and towns. The Washington Post has revealed the CIA has been operating stealth surveillance drones deep inside Iran for the last 3 years in an attempt to uncover evidence of an Iranian nuclear weapons program. In addition, the National Security Agency has ramped up eavesdropping on Iran, and the United States has expanded its network of spies inside Iran's borders. The news comes just days before Turkey hosts talks on Iran's nuclear program. Last week, Seymour Hersh revealed the U.S. Joint Special Operations Command trained the Iranian opposition group Mujahideen-e-Khalq, or MEK, at a secret site in Nevada, even though the group is listed as a foreign terrorist organization by the State Department. The MEK has been linked to the assassinations of several Iranian nuclear scientists. Police in Tulsa, Oklahoma have arrested 2 men in connection with a shooting spree that left 3 people dead and 2 injured. All the victims were African Americans. The shootings terrorized a predominantly black section of Tulsa. Police said the suspects, Jacob England and Alvin Watts, drove through the streets of North Tulsa in a pickup truck and randomly shot pedestrians. Police have not labeled the killings as hate crimes, but several local officials said the shootings were racially motivated. Reverend Warren Blackney is the president of the NAACP chapter in Tulsa.
So we want our people to know there's no need to go out and try and take vengeance and become a vigilante. Just wait through the process and let's see what's going to happen.
Afghanistan and the United States reached a deal on Sunday to curb night raids on Afghan homes, giving Kabul a veto over the operations, clearing the way for a wider pact extending the U.S. presence in Afghanistan. Under the agreement, Afghan authorities will have control over prisoners taken in night raids and decide whether to allow U.S. interrogators access to detainees. An Afghan judge would also have to grant a warrant approving operations. General John Allen is NATO commander in Afghanistan.
Today, we are one step closer to the establishment of the U.S.-Afghan strategic partnership. Most importantly, today, we are one step closer to our shared goal and vision of a secure and sovereign Afghanistan. Together, we will realize that vision.
Many Afghan residents criticize the agreement because it did not put an end to all night raids.
We don't want any forces entering our houses during the night, neither American forces nor Afghan forces. If they really need to inspect homes, they must come first and get permission, and then enter the houses.
Hundreds of people gathered Saturday in Athens, Greece, for the funeral of Dimitris Chrysoula, the 77-year-old retired pharmacist who shot and killed himself near the Greek Parliament building last week after writing a note that blamed his suicide on the economic crisis. Chrysoula's daughter, Emmy, spoke at his funeral and said his act had been deeply political.
You found it unacceptable that they were killing our freedom, our democracy, our dignity. You found it unacceptable as they tightened the harsh noose of economic austerity and apartheid around us. To the unacceptable act of surrendering our independence and the keys to the country, it was unacceptable to you that Greece did not acknowledge its children and its children did not recognize their own country. You found the bestiality of capitalism unacceptable, that it infiltrated our lives and no one tried to stop it. Then you made your decision to become the fear, the death, the memory, the sorrow of our ruined lives.
The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration has revealed that last month was the warmest March ever recorded in the United States. Temperatures in the lower 48 states were 8.6 degrees above normal for March and 6 degrees higher than average for the first 3 months of the year. In other climate news, representatives from dozens of countries met in Nepal this weekend for a conference on the impact of climate change on mountain communities. Rambaran Yadav is president of Nepal.
We all know that mountains all over the world are facing disproportionate impact of climate change, combined with the forces of globalization, continuing environmental degradation, and also socio-economic development. Climate change is making life, the mountains in developing countries, more difficult.
We will speak with former Maldives President Mohamed Nasheed later in the broadcast, a global voice on climate change. In economic news, the Japanese electronic company Sony has announced plans to slash about 10,000 jobs, or 6% of its global workforce. It's unclear how many of the jobs lost will be in the United States. Meanwhile, the U.S. Labor Department says just 120,000 jobs were created in March, far below the expected gain of 200,000 jobs. It was the smallest rise since October. In spite of the weak job growth, the unemployment rate edged down to 8.2% because more people have left the labor force. Bahrain is refusing to extradite jailed political activist Abdulhadi al-Khawaja, despite a request from Copenhagen to hand him over. Al-Khawaja, who is also a Danish citizen, has been on a hunger strike for over 2 months. Over the weekend, his daughter, Zainab al-Khawaja, was briefly detained and interrogated after she tried to see him at the military hospital where he's being held. Security guards reportedly tied her hands and legs to a wheelchair. Sunday marked the 60th day of al-Khawaja's hunger strike and the first anniversary of his arrest. You can go to our website at Democracy Now! To see our interview with his daughter. In news from Egypt, the former intelligence chief of ousted dictator Hosni Mubarak has joined the presidential race. Omar Suleiman made the announcement Friday. He headed Egypt's intelligence services for more than 18 years under Mubarak. Suleiman was a close U.S. ally who had a key role in the Bush administration's extraordinary rendition program. During the Egyptian uprising last year, Mubarak appointed Suleiman as his first-ever vice president. Meanwhile, a popular Islamist candidate named Hazem Salah Abu Ismail has been ruled ineligible to run because documents show his mother became a U.S. citizen before she died, a charge Ismail has disputed. The Nobel Prize-winning German author Günter Grass has been barred from visiting Israel after the publication last week of a poem titled What Must Be Said. In the poem, Günter Grass described the nuclear-armed state of Israel as a threat to world peace. The poem also assailed Israel for its threats to attack Iran, called for supervision of Israel's nuclear weapons, and criticized Germany for selling submarines to Israel. Grass is considered to be Germany's most famous living writer. He won the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1999. In related news, the Oscar-nominated filmmaker and journalist Laura Poitras has revealed she was detained Thursday after she landed at Newark International Airport from a trip to Britain. When she landed, she was interrogated by the Customs and Border Patrol. Agents threatened to handcuff her when she attempted to keep notes about the interrogation. Poitras told Salon.com's Glenn Greenwald she's detained and questioned almost every time she returns to the United States from overseas travel. She said it's, quote, very traumatizing to come home to your own country and have to go through this every time. Poitras is the director of The Oath and My Country, My Country. The Oath was about Guantanamo prisoners returning to Yemen after being released by the U.S. government. Minneapolis police arrested 12 Occupy protesters Saturday. Several activists say they were the victims of police brutality. Local television station KSTP said one of its employees was videotaping the arrest when an officer shoved his camera, knocking it to the ground and slightly injuring the cameraman. One of China's best-known dissidents, Fang Lijie, has died at the age of 76. He was viewed as a key figure in the pro-democracy movement behind the 1989 Tiananmen Square protests. And the legendary 60 Minutes correspondent Mike Wallace has died at the age of 93. He worked at 60 Minutes for almost 40 years, beginning in 1968. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. We begin